Welcome to Control the Flame, the podcast that helps you tame your temper and manage your anger. I'm your host, Claire Bradley, the Anger Management Coach. In this podcast, I'll share with you tips, techniques and strategies to cope with anger in a healthy and constructive way. Whether you struggle with anger yourself or you have to deal with someone who does, this podcast is for you. Each week, I'll bring you expert interviews, inspiring stories, and practical advice on how to control the flame and live a more peaceful and fulfilling life. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn how to master your emotions and take charge of your anger.
Well, good morning. So, thank you so much to Amy Deards, who is our very first guest speaker here on the Anger Management Coach. Thank you so much, Amy. Absolutely does mean the world to me that you agreed to come on and speak today. So, can I ask, would you just give a little bit of an introduction of yourself, etc., and why are we having this chat today?
Well, thank you for asking me. I think this is the only second podcast I've done, so this is very exciting. So I'm Amy, and I am a mindset coach, but I focus on women in sobriety, and that's obviously because I am a recovering alcoholic. I'm now 5 years sober, and it's been a journey, as everything in life is. And when you suggested coming on here, and I'd never really I don't think I'd looked at anger and the link between anger and addiction before. But as soon as you kind of said that when we were chatting on Messenger or whatever we were chatting on, I was like, oh my God, yeah. Being an addict made me a very angry person. Really angry.
Yeah.
And I see it in my clients. I see the anger, I see the resentment, I see the frustration. And I think it is a really huge topic to talk about because, you know, I know from my own personal experience, when I was angry or frustrated or resentful, I'd drink. And it's this cycle that never kind of stops going. And then how do you get yourself out of the cycle and all of that stuff? So I think this is going to be a really interesting topic to talk about.
Thank you, and congratulations on your 5 years of sobriety.
Thank you.
You know, it's as well. Some people may know, having heard, I struggled with gambling addiction for several years. Absolutely turned my world around. You know, at that point, every day literally is a celebration of having not drunk in your case, having gambled in my case. So to get to 5 years is no mean feat. So many congratulations on that. And again, thank you for coming and talking to us, mate. But just on that, how did alcohol and anger affect? Well, how did alcohol affect your experience of anger? Would there be a specific time when anger made you turn to alcohol, or vice versa?
I think it just becomes normal. I think it's only coming into sobriety and into recovery and then doing the work on myself that I can look back and see it, because at the time it's normal and everybody does it. Like, you have a shit day, or you have a run-in with somebody at work, or maybe the other half has annoyed you, or you're frustrated with this, or you're angry with that. It kind of seems like the societal solution is to go to the pub or is to grab a drink and you chat you chat it over with your friends and you put the world to rights, and after a few drinks everything seems so much better. Of course that hasn't solved any problem whatsoever, and it just, because you're hiding from the issue, you're kind of drowning the issue, whether it was with drink or whether it's through drugs or gambling or food or whatever it may be. this anger is still living within you, and it's there waiting to flare up at any given opportunity. So it's only through looking back that I could see that I had so much unresolved anger that fueled my drinking. It was an excuse
Yeah.
to keep going.
And what strategies did you use when you were going through the recovery from the alcohol? What strategies did you use to then beat that anger rather than picking up a drink?
I think I've worked a 12-step program, and that taught me a lot because I mean, step 4, you're listing out all your resentments. You're listing out any wrongs you've ever done, ever. And I can remember saying to my sponsor at the time, I don't have any resentments. Like, I'm absolutely fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. And it was, but she was like, Amy, there will be. And it wasn't until I sat down and wrote it out that I think I had a list of 27 resentments against various different people for various different things. And the resentment fueled my anger. And it was then I learned that the resentment is actually me. It isn't necessarily what other people have done. It was my own fears, my own expectations, my own needs necessarily not being met. And when I could understand that I was kind of the cause of the problem, but then equally I could be my own solution as well, it started to change. And now in recovery, I've got various different techniques. I meditate an awful lot. That massively helps. There's specific meditations I do to release emotion, whether that's like I need to have a good cry, or recently I did one. There was a particularly challenging few weeks at work, and I did this meditation and I just screamed. I absolutely just screamed. I love to scream in the car. I love driving along, screaming in the car because it gets that emotion out of my body. And it's about learning that it's just a fleeting moment. I don't need to hang on to this because the anger is serving. It doesn't hurt anybody else. It's only hurting me.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point, isn't it? Is that we're hurting ourselves by hanging on to it. And as you say, what purpose does holding on to that resentment? Because generally when we've held on to it, we are just hurting ourselves. Because if it's somebody else who we feel has done us wrong, they've generally moved on. They're probably not even aware that they've done anything to hurt us.
Exactly.
But we're still in our head and our heart, desperately holding on to these things. And I feel quite often as well, that what we think is causing us to be angry is often not really that cause.
Uh-uh. Yeah, it's the trigger, isn't it? It's that. Go on, sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to, we all have triggers, right? Everything will trigger something. And I often, whatever emotion it is, yes, I might be annoyed at the event at that moment in time. So like with some stuff that's been going on at work recently, that's triggered a lot of anger in me. But the actual feeling I felt was probably helplessness. And it was that in some way, it's triggered my fear that I'm not good enough in some way. So that's actually probably the underlying thing, as opposed, yes, I was angry at the situation, but on a deeper level, it's triggered something in me where I feel lack, or I don't feel good enough, or I feel like I'm going to be rejected, or whatever, the deep-seated fears I have. That's actually what the emotion is about. It's not necessarily at the person, it's generally at myself.
Yeah. And anger is very much an emotion that piggybacks another emotion.
Yeah.
It's a secondary. So it's really good how you just said that and worded that and acknowledged that, yeah, we get angry. And anger is, it's a natural emotion, but it is always piggybacking something else. So I'm just interested, what were some of the biggest emotional challenges that you faced during your recovery, and how did you build resilience for them?
I am known for being quite resilient. Even I don't really understand how I'm resilient as I am, considering the amount of crap I've gone through in recovery. I think I was about 8, maybe 9, 10 months sober when the pandemic hit. So if that's not going to teach you resilience, I don't really know what is. Then I had the death of my sponsor. My sponsor died. Then I've had, I'd never really experienced death until I was in my recovery. I had grandparents die. I've got a brother who's in addiction. And it's learning not to hide from your emotions. I think the more we suppress them, the more we just carry on, or the more there's a thing about having a positive mindset, and I'm all about having a positive mindset, but I believe there's also toxic positivity where you're overlooking everything bad and just being positive. You're suppressing it. And that will come out in some way or the other. And by acknowledging your feelings, and I might give myself, sometimes I will put a time limit on it, particularly if it's self-pity, for example. It's a dangerous emotion for an addict. But if I feel a bit sorry for myself, I'll put a time limit on it, but I feel it. And the more I allow those feelings to come into my body, and the more I kind of sit in them, it takes the power away. So instead of me being controlled by my emotions, I can start to actually control them. And it starts with the thought processes, because your thoughts your thoughts trigger the emotions, and then your emotions trigger your behaviors. So in order to change the outcome, you've got to start with the thought process. So it's, using that meditation and journaling to really figure out what it is I'm actually thinking. So if I'm feeling in a certain way, what is it I'm actually thinking? And then when I can start to change the thought processes, that changes the emotions in my body, which will then change the outcome essentially. And that's all I do on a kind of daily basis. And it takes time, it takes patience, it takes practice. But when you can start to learn to control your thoughts, then you can change the emotion, the anger, whatever the emotion is, and that will start to change the outcome that you truly desire to have in your life. If that makes sense.
So do you think reflection then takes, and I love what you've just said there, because as you're saying it, I'm nodding away thinking, absolutely. Because in my own journey, as I've started to coach more, my brain is just constantly reflecting and thinking and thinking and thinking. And I think, and you'll probably be the same, as a mindset coach, you do something and then you'll think about, why did I do that? And it's constantly being aware of the why. Why did I do that? What does that mean? So do you think for someone who is perhaps even at the start of their recovery journey, do you think it's helpful for them to think about why am I doing this? What is behind that? Do you think that would play an important part?
I think sometimes we need to. I kind of have a different approach with it. I think we can get so focused on the why we do something, it then actually doesn't change it. So I did a year of CBT therapy coming out of rehab. I did a year of CBT, and it got to the point where I kept talking about the past so much, it just kept me there. And I thought, I didn't come into recovery to keep going on about the past. Like, yes, I have a fear of rejection. Yes, I have a fear of not being good enough. I'm a perfectionist and all of these, things that I have about me. But do I actually need to know why I'm like that? Or if I know that I am like that, what can I do to change it? So I think sometimes we get so focused on trying to find out why we feel a certain way, when we don't necessarily need to know why we feel a certain way. If we've got the tools to change it, it's about changing the patterns of behaviors. I'm reading a book at the minute called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Amazing book, very enlightening. Because it's all subconscious patterns. Everything I think by our mid-30s, 95% of what we do is on autopilot. we think the same things
Mm-hmm.
every single day. So we think the same things, we feel the same way, we get the same outcome. So it's about that self-awareness and taking the time to to see your subconscious patterns, not just in your thinking, but in your body, because that's, some event will happen which triggers an emotion in your body because the emotion's stored in your body. And it's about learning to release that and retrain your thinking so that you actually, whether you want to feel grateful or loved or abundant or I don't know, all these amazing feelings, you almost retrain yourself for that. So I think sometimes it's helpful to know why we do the things we do, but I would say don't get hung up on it. That would be my own personal opinion. I think where I got hung up on it, it drove me
Yeah.
absolutely mad.
Absolutely. And also it kind of validates it, doesn't it? But if that's giving you the reason and the constant reason, we need to move away from that. And again, what you've just said, the neuro-linguistic programming of we're in our unconscious mind a lot of the time, perhaps the biggest percentage of the time. And it's about breaking those kind of unconscious things that we're doing, the things that keep us comfortable and our unconscious
Yeah.
keeps us safe, and
Yeah.
moving away from that. Must read that book then. So can you tell us a bit about your motivation then, your journey that's taken you from sobriety, and what has motivated you to become a mindset coach?
I had no intention whatsoever of having my own business or becoming a coach. It wasn't, it wasn't in my plan. But obviously coming into sobriety, then, the pandemic was a big it was a big thing for a lot of people. That at that time where I was doing 12-step meetings, they were all physical meetings. There wasn't online meetings really at that point. It wasn't necessarily a big thing. And I knew that in order to stay well, I would have to up my game. I knew I would have to up my self-care. I would have to share more. I'd have to talk about my thoughts and my feelings more, because when you do that, when you talk about them, it releases that power. They don't have that as much power over you. So I actually saw an advert on Facebook for Davina McCall's fitness platform. And I thought, well, she's in recovery. So if this is good enough for her, it'll be good enough for me. And I joined that and started to share my journey in there. And there was so much fear of judgment, that people were going to judge me, that they were going to dislike me or reject me. And they didn't. Like, they embraced me. They embraced my honesty, my vulnerability. And I would share how I got myself out of difficult situations. And then people just kept coming to me for advice. And it literally was, well, if people are going to keep asking me to help them, I might as well get paid for it. That's what started the business. And it's evolved. I studied nutrition. I'm qualified as a nutrition coach, but I don't practice what I preach. So I knocked that on the head. And it was the mindset bit that people wanted anyway. They wanted to learn how I think the way I do, and how, not that anyone really knew me before, but if they had known, those people that did know me before, I was the most negative, pessimistic, glass half empty person ever. I was so negative, and now how I've changed that to become really positive. I think people are really interested in that. So that's what spurred me on. And the motivation is, especially in recovery, it can be lonely. It can be isolating. You feel very misunderstood, that no one understands you and you're the only person going through this. And I think it's really important to keep sharing the message that you're not, that we do think the same things, we do feel the same way. You're not alone. And I think if I can prevent anybody, even if it's just one person, hitting the rock bottom that I had, then it's worth it, because we don't have to get to rock bottom, I don't think, with addiction. You can stop at any time. And everyone's rock bottom will be different. But if I can help just one person to see the value in themselves, and that they are worthy of a life beyond all imagination, then the ripple effect of that is just amazing.
Yeah. And that is such a powerful message to say to people, you are absolutely worthy. And I wish somebody had told me that when I was sitting at rock bottom thinking, I just want a way out of this. I just want this to stop. And I'm sure there's thousands of people who, in fact, probably millions, who exactly think, I just want to get off this boat and for things to be better and, to be this person living a better life. I'm interested in, because I have my experience of talking to professionals about it when I was, trying to recover. What was your experience of dealing with professionals at the start of your journey? Did you have any dealings with professionals?
I, I, it got to the point where I had to admit that I had a bit of an issue with
Mm,
alcohol. I wouldn't admit I was an alcoholic.
mm,
And I did go to the GP. And they're not massively trained in addiction. They don't really know how to deal with it in my experience. And, it was like a case of, we'll just cut down. And I thought, well, if I could just cut down, I wouldn't really be here, would I? And
Yeah,
it kind of spiraled. I did go into, so I started my CBT therapy before I went into rehab. And because it started digging into the past, it brought up so many figures and so much stuff that it massively, in one way, escalated my drinking. But I'm grateful for that now, because then I
mm,
hit rock bottom where I got to where you said, I don't want this anymore. I want this to stop. I didn't know how to
yeah,
make it stop. So my way out was to, do something quite serious. And I didn't. And I actually phoned the Samaritans instead, and they were amazing. And 4 days later, I was in rehab, and you're obviously there with therapists, and all the therapists themselves are in recovery. And it was just the most amazing experience to talk with somebody
yeah,
who actually understands what you're going through.
yeah,
Because with the best will in the world, trying to explain addiction to a muggle, they don't get it. They just
yeah,
don't get it. And I did continue with CBT when I come out of rehab. My therapist, though, he wasn't an addict, but so he could, I think there was a certain point that he could help me, but a lot of the support came from 12-step recovery like programs. And then in fairness, I don't necessarily go to 12-step meetings anymore, because again, I found it a lot centered around the past, and I don't want to keep talking about my past. I want to create my future.
yeah,
Um, and then I've hired
absolutely.
coaches, and I've hired people to help me to understand who I am, what I want, and how I can get that without constantly living or being Amy, the recovering alcoholic. Like, I don't want to be just a
Yeah,
recovering alcoholic. I want to be Amy in all parts. So the professionals
yeah,
definitely help. I think we do need that professional help early days. I do. But then you almost figure out your own path,
um,
and it's about what works for you, not what everybody else says is the right thing to do.
yeah. And I think from what you've just said, then our experiences of going to the GP, and for me, there was a huge having to gulp down that. Okay, this is me, and I'm going to have to go and see somebody now.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing to knock on the GP's door and say, I've got a bit of a problem, I need some help. From what you just said and from how I experienced it, the GP didn't have that kind of, I wanted it to be a light bulb moment and for everything to be taken away, and it wasn't that. So I guess it's kind of like for anybody listening, if you go to your GP and you don't get the answers or that help that you need, please don't stop, to keep
Mm,
stepping forward and to keep seeking that help, because that isn't the end of the road. It's very, very much the beginning.
yeah. I think
So you just keep going.
And there are dedicated things out there. You know, there are drug and alcohol services. There are gambling services. There's all these things available. And I think it would be easy to say, well, the GP didn't help me, so it's their fault, you know. And the thing with coming into recovery is you have to be willing to take 100% responsibility for your own life. It's nobody else's fault. It's, you know, it's not about blaming other people or this, you know, my parents didn't give me enough love or whatever when I was younger. Or I think we get into this blame culture. It's about, okay, maybe they didn't, but this is your life. What do you want from it? And if, you know, we go to extreme lengths to feed our addictions, I went to extreme lengths to feed my drinking habits and drug habits and all of the other habits I had. It's now about going to those alternative lengths the other way.
Yeah.
So how much do you want it?
And that's such a powerful thing to say, is absolutely how much do you want it? And, you know, whilst we're in those horrible dark depths of whatever is dragging us down, as you say, we will go to extreme lengths to have that, or the need of it. You know, I have so much guilt about how my life went. And so to come, as you say, it's so important to look at that other end and to, you know, the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. But it's there and it's incredibly bright. And as you say, we can be in such negative, glass half full, glass not even being a glass, it's just a bottle that I'm drinking out of. You know what I mean? It's that horrible, constant negativity in our brain that and I absolutely hear you when you say that. I also used to be the same. And so for me, almost like on a daily basis, I have to keep nudging myself when I have a bit of negativity and do that whole, come on, let's get out of this pattern. Let's start to be a bit more positive and, you know, constantly fight towards that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in knowing about your, as you said, woo-woo magic in your coaching. So how did you incorporate, and you talked about CBT before as well, so how did you incorporate the CBT technique and your woo-woo magic into your coaching practice?
I don't really know how. I obviously CBT, you know, is something I studied, and obviously I've had it, and it's all around changing the way you think, and you know, and because the way we think, the way we feel, it's all just repetition. We repeat the same cycles. You repeatedly tell yourself you're not good enough. You repeatedly tell yourself you're a horrible person. You're repeatedly telling yourself this. So it's about repeatedly doing the opposite thing. You know, it's a bit more complicated than that, but essentially that's what it is. And then obviously the more I coached, there's just this innate ability within me to know what somebody's thinking or feeling without them having to say. And whether that's woo-woo magic, whether that's just a real sense of compassion and empathy and understanding, I don't know. But there is something within me that will just know without somebody needing to tell me what they're going through. And I don't know how I can do that. I can't explain it. So it works well within coaching because, and I know that I did this, you tell somebody what you want them to know, because sometimes admitting the truth of what you think and how you feel is terrifying, because you don't want to be judged and you don't want to be rejected and all of those things, because you're already judging and rejecting yourself because of it. So you don't want somebody else to do that. So it's almost like I will just say it and they're like, there's this huge sense of relief because they don't have to say it, but they know somebody gets it and they know that somebody understands. And then I've just kind of honed in on that intuition, I guess, and I will do oracle card readings and angel card readings. And I wish I could tell you how I do it, but the truth is I just don't know. I can just do it. It's a bit like singing. I'm in a choir. I can just sing. I don't know how I can do it. I can just do it. But it works well because I think it's not necessarily what I don't know. It's not like I see people or I can hear things. I can sense things, and it's like I will. Say I'm coaching you, for example. This flash of, I don't know, it might be an image or it might be a word that keeps coming into my head, and I have to say this word, and you'll be like, yes, that's exactly what it was. I don't know. It's bizarre how it works. And it's something greater than me. It's not, this is something greater than myself, which makes me sound absolutely crazy. And I am a bit crazy, but that's fine. So yeah,
I don't know. It sounds as though that is your unconscious and you've walked in those footsteps. And maybe you're, consciously you've filtered that away and put it away, I don't know. And your unconscious is bringing it back for you. And that is such a great relationship to have with your client, isn't it? And build up an amazing relationship of trust.
Yeah.
Because you're getting it.
I think I've always had this, I don't know, there's something about me that people feel like they can tell me stuff. Or even in my drinking days that happened. So there's clearly something about me that people feel they can trust. And I think because I am so open and honest and I don't hold back, I say exactly what I think. I've learned to be a bit more diplomatic around it. But I think because I am so transparent and I share my struggles, I think there's this culture on social media to only share the good. We only share our holidays, or we only share when we've had a win, or we only share, this Instagram worthy life that leads to all this comparison and all that bullshit. But because I don't do that, I share my struggles and I share when I'm down and I share when I'm going through stuff that's challenging. I think people, they know I'm not going to judge them. They know that, I might not necessarily have been in the same situation, but I can relate to something that they're going through. So whether it is a higher power, whether, it is the universe or spirits, or whether it, I believe my higher power is within me anyway. And it could be, just this unconscious pattern or this unconscious thinking where I think, oh, well, I've stored that away and it just comes up at exactly the right time. I don't know. And it's all intuition and things like that. But we all have the ability to do that. It's just harnessing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love that sort of that inner being, that, and I love it. And I want to go, woo. Or it's absolute zen, isn't it? Me. I love that. I love that idea. So thinking about mindset coaching, what are the common misconceptions that people might have about mindset coaching, and how do you address that?
I think because people don't really understand, I think it's a case of that they just want to think positive. I think we understand, there's a negative mindset, there's a positive mindset. And like I touched on earlier, there's a toxic positivity. And I'm not going to teach you just to think positive. And I think the misconception with coaching as a whole is that I'm going to give you the answers, and I'm not. That's not what I do. And I will know the answer. I will, you might tell me X, Y, Z has happened and you feel this and you feel that. And how do I just get to, I will know the answer. Of course I will. I just know the answer. But I'm not doing my job properly if I give it to you, because it's about teaching people the skills so that they can start to find that for themselves. They can start to, use meditation or journaling or exercise or whatever, there's so many different tools that we can use. I think the biggest misconception is that a coach isn't there to give you the answers. They're there to help you find the answers for yourself, because that's so much more valuable than someone just going, well, if you just do this, then I could do that and it might work. But then they're not learning those skills for themselves. And I don't want someone to have to rely on me forever in order to live their life. I want to be able to give them the skills so that they can, you know, do this for themselves over and over and over and over again. So I think there is also this fear of what might I find. A big fear of my clients is they don't necessarily want to open up because they're scared of who they might find, of what they might find. And I did a video about this the other day. We often think like, what if, in terms of a negative way? Okay, well, what if I don't like who I am? What if I'm a horrible person? What if I deserve everything bad that's ever happened to me? And I'll just say, well, what if none of that's true? What if this is all working out for you? What if everything we've been through has all been for our greater good? If I wasn't an alcoholic, I wouldn't be doing what I do now. So how can I hate who I was? I can't. I love her. And that's been a process of forgiveness and all of that stuff. But I just think it's such a wide topic. And essentially all I do is listen to people's crap. And I think that's one of the big things you can give people.
Yeah, and I often say to my clients, it's a journey, and I'll say to them, just see it as we're going for a walk. And let's see it as we're going for a walk, and I'm going to walk alongside you, I'll open the gate, and you can walk ahead, and I'll just be there.
Yeah.
Because, as you say, it is just about perhaps asking the right question for them, for their unconscious to give them the answers to, for them to essentially learn how to coach themselves.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to be there all the time, and that's the sign of a good mindset coach is you can teach people to coach themselves, which is incredibly powerful.
I think it is. And once you learn to do that, and I think people need to kind of be of the mindset of that there is no destination. There is no end goal. We're taught to set a goal with an end date, and you've completed it when X, Y, Z has happened. Obviously, coming into recovery, I will only complete my goal if I die sober. That's it, really. That's how I know I've completed it. So it's the same with learning about who you are. We're limitless. There is no end to our potential. And you sometimes have to go through the same crap, the same stuff will come back up and you think, oh, I've dealt with that. But we're layers of an onion, and you're just peeling away these layers, and you think you may have got to the core and you realize there's still more to go, and it's never ending. I think human beings are fascinating. And when you are interested in how the mind works and what makes people tick, you'll never be bored. It's just so fascinating.
And I think that's so empowering to think, like, what next? What next?
Yeah.
What next? And we are our own limits, aren't we? If we put things in front of ourselves, or we are scared, or that's ourselves stopping ourselves. And it's about absolutely not just breaking those barriers, but bursting through those barriers and kind of screaming like, come on, bring it on, life. I'm here. I love that idea.
It's amazing. Honestly, it just lights me up. It will be eternally fascinated by people. I just think we are fascinating people.
And I can see that in you as we're talking. We're both like suddenly beaming, because it is such an amazing to feel and to think that, you know what, just by being us, by being whatever us is, we can use our journey, our life, ups, downs, good bits, bad bits, to help one another, to help other people, for them burst through and peel back those layers. That's so amazing, such a great feeling.
It really is, and I love what you do with the. Is it you go into schools, and I think I've seen that. Is it schools or stuff like that? And I think
children.
Teach this then. We don't, how much has Pythagoras served me in my adult life? I can't even remember what it is. So let's teach these kids mindset skills. Let's teach them how to do life. And then maybe the world won't be such an awful place, because it is at times.
Yeah, and I had some really interesting conversations with some of the teachers. So I was in a college on, what day was it? Tuesday, I think it was. And they were saying that the kind of the young people of today, their mindset has changed massively. And they said a lot of people are blaming it on COVID. But that they are very kind of the young people that are currently in our colleges, the 17-year-olds, 18, etc., are almost very coming across as very entitled. They're swearing at teachers. They are refusing to do any work. Well, this is a college, you want to be here, but you're not willing to do any work. It's there's almost an immaturity in them. And I think that's so sad. It worries me for the future of how we're all going to live with anger, with
I
whatever
think there
other
is,
emotions are.
we need to teach people how to cope with emotions. Teach emotional intelligence and compassion and empathy and all of those things. And how much nicer would the world be if we all just showed a little bit more kindness? But we have to start with showing that kindness to ourselves first.
Absolutely. And not being so angry with the small things in life, but we will get there. So lastly, what are some of the most common issues that your clients face, and how do you help them navigate through the challenges?
I think the most common one, it probably is this feeling of I'm not good enough. And that's essentially what kind of most fears bottle down to. When you break them down one by one, whatever that you're scared of, in some way we think we're not good enough. And the way that it was explained to me, and the way that I try and help my clients understand it, and I share this on social media as well, is someone said to me, like, if I don't have children, but I've got a nephew. When he was born, so if those of you who've got children, or I don't know, you've got a baby that's been born, you want the best for that child. Like, they don't have to do anything to earn your love. You just give this unconditional love, and you want the absolute best for them. They don't have to do anything, they don't have to earn it. It doesn't matter if they cock things up, you still love them anyway. And they said, you were that child once. The only thing is that you've just got older.
Yeah.
And I think I especially believe for so long that I had to earn love. I had to earn my parents' love. I had to, earn their approval. And sometimes I don't always get their approval. They don't always agree with everything I do, but I realize I don't have to. It's my life. I can, I don't need their approval. But I just think we put these limits we're talking about, this unconditional love that you would willingly give to your child that they don't have anything for most of us, obviously not everybody, but for most of us, that happened for us as well. We don't have to earn this love, our love. We don't have to prove we're good enough to anybody. Just know inherently that you are, and that takes time. But I think once you start to push your comfort zones and you start to build on your confidence, and this is a big one, is people waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel motivated. It doesn't come by waiting. It doesn't come. I could sit here all day long and think, just come to me. like the confidence will just drop through the sky and then I'll be able to do X, Y, Z. No, it comes from doing things, you know, and when you start to prove to yourself what you can do. You start to build that belief in yourself, that confidence in yourself. You start to feel proud of yourself. And then, like you said, you start to think, oh, what's next? And you start to consistently prove to no other bugger, because it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. You know, you're showing yourself that you are good enough just as you are. You don't need to be like me. You don't need to be like, I don't know, King K or whoever the fuck anybody wants to be like. Just by being you always has been and always will be enough. I think when you can accept that, it's amazing.
I honestly, that is such a powerful ending, really, for our chat today, and that it is, you are good enough. You absolutely are good enough. Believe in that. Be kind to yourself, and just go and get through those layers of life and love it. And let us know when you've done it, because we want to celebrate with you. We want to be your biggest cheerleader. I love that. Absolutely do. Thank you so much for being my very first guest today. I have thoroughly
thank you for having
enjoyed
me.
the chat. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Control the Flame podcast. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode and learned some useful tips on how to manage your anger in a healthy way. If you've been affected by anything in the podcast, or if you want to share your feedback or questions, please email claire@angermanagementcoach.co.uk and I'll be happy to hear from you and offer you more support. Thank you for listening, and do remember, you have the power to control the flame.